Hi, I'm Megha Sharma, and we are reporting for the G7 Leaders Summit that is taking place in Kananaskis in Alberta. I'm right now in Banff, and joining me on the show is Professor John Kirton. He's director of the G7 Research Group at the University of Toronto. Professor Kirton, thank you very much for speaking to me on Newsx. And my first question to you about your perception of what is going to be the agenda of the G7 Leaders Summit. We see all the leaders arriving one after the other today.
Well, the first agenda item that they'll take up is the newest one that's been added. It's Israel's attack on Iran and Iran's predictable response. It is the clearest, most dangerous war at the moment when you have a nuclear-armed Israel trying to stop Iran both from acquiring a nuclear weapon, but perhaps even trying to change the entire leadership of Iran. Regime change. The United States has tried and failed that before. Why Israel thinks it can do it now is beyond many people's calculations.
That's interesting. And how do you view the global reactions, particularly from Europe and North America, going about supporting Israel in its strikes that have killed more than 80 people, a lot of civilians as well? There has been condemnation that has been expressed by these countries, while on the other hand we see Russia and China going on supporting Iran and targeting Israel and United States of America for this bloodbath that has happened in Iran in the last 48 hours. What's your view on that?
Well, I think all G7 leaders are united just in their statements over the last day or two, and will be more when they sit down together in the message that ceasefire now, stop the slaughter, de-escalate, and get back to the negotiating table. And it's quite clear that it was Israel who started this, so that is, in practice, a great condemnation of Benjamin Netanyahu's actions and the policies and the crazy hopes that lie behind.
What do you make of, I don't know if has there been a statement from the United Nations, the UNSC, condemning the act of violence from Israel's side? Because right now I think the majority of the world is supporting Israel, despite the fact that there have been a large number of civilian infrastructure, residential buildings that have been struck in Iran.
Well, we've just had a report that Donald Trump apparently told Netanyahu, no, don't try and kill all the leaders of Iran. So even Donald Trump knows, right, that it can't be done. It'll make things much worse, and that America and Donald Trump's support for Israel and even for Netanyahu has its limits, and those limits are now. They probably have been crossed with the extensive damage done to civilian targets and the killing of innocent civilians in Iran, which you just referenced. But it's basically impossible for Israel by itself to physically destroy Iran's nuclear capability. And from what we know so far, Donald Trump has not given Israel the best American weapons that would give Netanyahu a better chance of getting closer to his goal. So that's a second limit that Donald Trump has, and he's held the line on that one too.
Coming back to G7, there's a lot of talk about the joint communique that is going to be released at the end of the G7 summit. What do you think are going to be the key issues that are going to be discussed, and what is the likely outcome of it with regards to these democracies coming together and trying to resolve the Iran-Israel issue? Also, Russia was one of the countries that said that, it would like to mediate in this matter and resolve the issue, something that has not been accepted by Europe or by America. So what is the sure short solution to this new conflict that we are witnessing, which is aggravating as the days go pass by?
Well, it's simply unbelievable that anybody would trust a leader in a country, Vladimir Putin, who initiated a war and who continues to slaughter innocent civilians in Ukraine, to try and mediate another conflict, quickly acquiring similar tragic characteristics. What I do think, though, is sure, UN resolutions, hasn't stopped really any wars in the Middle East in the past. But if you have Donald Trump, who failed in his attempt to negotiate a deal with the Iranian leadership through his envoy, Steve Witkoff, now turning to his G7 peers and partners, that all of them together have a much better chance, not only of having the Iranian leadership trust them, but also having them say to a Netanyahu, no more support from any of us to you of any kind unless you stop and pull back from the brink. Ceasefire now, de-escalate.
But that hasn't stopped America in backing Israel and countering these ballistic missiles that are and the projectiles that are hitting Israel from the Iranian forces.
I think it's too much to ask that the United States engage in direct military action against Israel itself. And of course, Trump isn't even threatening or promising to do that. He is the one who is more in the middle than Vladimir Putin could ever be. But even more in the middle are the other G7 leaders. So when they all come together, being already in the middle, they could come to exactly the same place in the middle and say with one voice, ceasefire now, de-escalate, negotiate.
Okay, coming back to the G7 nations and the strife that they have been facing in wake of Trump's tariffs. There at this point of time has been a temporary pause. And all these G7 nations, the European Union, and also the other invitee nations, the observer nations, including India, South Korea, Brazil, Mexico, they are wanting to strike a deal with Trump that is going to be mutually beneficial to both countries, because these countries are at this point in time suffering. What is expected? Do you think there is a likelihood of bilaterals taking place between these countries and Trump, and what could be the outcome of it with regards to the tariffs impositions?
Well, Trump's tariff war will certainly dominate many of the discussions bilaterally between the G7 leaders. And when the host of the G7 summit, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, sits down with Donald Trump for a bilateral first thing tomorrow morning, tariffs will be the number one item. I think at the end of the G7 summit, we'll see at least a clear signal that Trump has declared a truce, things won't get worse, and probably that he will pull back from the brink, maybe delay the deadlines he set, and even take some tariffs off. Mm-hmm. After all, he's done both of those things with Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union, a bigger economic space than the United States itself. He's done it with Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the United Kingdom, who got some of his tariffs from Trump, not just delayed, but actually taken off. So all the other leaders will say, if them, why not me? Especially because Trump now knows that those tariffs, his tariffs, are harming his own fellow Americans and his own supporters in the United States itself. So he needs a way out, and I think this is the best time and place to begin to turn the tide for him.
And it's interesting to note while there is unanimity and unity that we see amongst the G7 nations and other countries in the West when they express condemnation for Iran's nuclear program, on the other end, we just saw just a few hours ago, the French President Emmanuel Macron was in Greenland. He has showcased his support. He said Greenland cannot be purchased, it cannot be taken away, it cannot be annexed. And he's spoken about democracy, which is you know, at the end of the day, directly targeting Donald Trump, who has been talking about taking control of Greenland and talking about annexation. We also see Trump harping upon his desire to make Canada the 51st state. How is that going to play out at the G7, and particularly with regards to US and Canada relationships? And Mark Carney, being the new head of state, do you think there is going to be a reset of relations between two countries?
Oh, I think there is. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Never before has one G7 leader said to the others, I want all of your country to be part of mine, and I'm going to get it if necessary by economic force. That's what Trump said to and about Canada, and the tariff war, Canada's target number one, that's economic force. With Greenland, Denmark, of course, is the ultimate sovereign there. It's a member of the European Union. It's even worse. He also wants it all, but he's prepared to use military force. He hasn't ruled it out. But now, of course, as Macron's visit signifies, all of the major European powers and G7 members in their own right, and with nuclear arms of their own, Macron has those, are just saying, no, absolutely not. So I think Trump, he may say to the television cameras or even to Macron and Carney and bilateral meetings, you know, Canada would be better off as the 51st state. But nobody's going to be listening to him anymore. And if he just go on about that, he'll lose even more credibility on key issues than he already has in some senses.
What do you make of the invite that has been sent out by Canadian Prime Minister Carney to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's also going to be arriving at the G7 summit? What does this indicate, particularly in wake of the relationship between India and Canada, you know, reaching its lowest ebb in the last 1.5 years under the leadership of the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
I think it was a great move on Prime Minister Carney's first for several reasons. The first is he and his Indian counterparts already have put in place a judicial-like process to get the facts, share the facts, and then judge the evidence about what really happened and who was behind it in the unfortunate death a while ago of a Canadian of Indian origin who supported, well, the destruction of India, the separation of a region from it. And national unity, of course, is something that Canadians are all too familiar with. It will be the first chance for Modi and Carney to sit down face to face and to deepen that process, come to a joint understanding. And then they'll sit down with all of the fellow G7 leaders and probably the outreach ones, Modi again, because foreign interference was already on the agenda. And I think what we'll see is an agreement by the G7 and the G7 plus leaders to stop foreign interference. So there will be no more Indian interference in Canada in ways that, well, lead to the deaths of a Canadian citizen of Indian origin.
But there have been, several times in the recent months, India has sent out dossiers providing proof of the criminal and terrorist extremist activities that a number of, pro-Khalistani separatists, extremists, even terrorists have been indulging on the soil of Canada. There have been dossiers that had been provided by India with regards to Nijja's criminal history. India at this point in time is again looking at Canadian leadership to cooperate and collaborate with the Indian law enforcement agencies. In fact, there have been a number of times, and to no real, fruition of things coming when similar discussions were being held with the former Prime Minister of Canada. Do you think there could be a reset in that regard as well?
Oh, very much. So far, despite all of the investigations, there's no evidence that Modi himself thought up the idea and gave the order, kill that Canadian over there. There's also no evidence that those closest to Modi back in India did a similar thing. It could well be, though, that some members of the Indian government charged with preventing separatist actions may have thought they had passive permission, or indeed just went beyond the allowable lines from their political leadership and supported, if not conducted, such an act. So I think Modi will understand that he doesn't want anyone interfering in Indian politics and killing Indians, right, for whatever cause. And he wants it stopped because he could be hurt even worse at home, right, if he doesn't shut it down there so that others, Canadians and all of the G7 leaders, will shut it down too at home.
Okay, also, finally, I would like to understand from you, you're holding this book, the Kananaskis Summit 2025, G7. If you could tell us more about this.
This is one of the things that the G7 research group does for each summit. It produces the background book in which all of the G7 leaders have an article which outline their hopes, their policies, their priorities for the summit. The head of the leading international organizations also do so. Experts on the key issues, but also in each section, the performance articles about how the G7 has done on key issues such as the economy in the past. What commitments have they made? And importantly, how well they've implemented them. Have promises made, been promises kept? And then, because we assume they want to keep their promises, what they should do more of and less of in order to raise the implementation, raise the compliance, as we call it.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Kirton, for joining me, sharing your views. That has been quite enlightening. And with that, I come to the end of this interview. And stay tuned and keep watching Newsx.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.